All right, here's our brisket for the day. It's an 18-pound prime. Looks fairly decent in the package. It's been in my fridge, give or take 21 days. We're gonna get this to the sink, get it rinsed and dried off. First thing I wanna do is to just remove this thick, what I call a fat pad. Our goal is going to be to try to level this end, the point end, to the flat end as best as possible. You don't have to remove any silver skin. I like to do it for visual purposes. As I'm removing the silver skin, I'm keeping my knife blade pointed upwards to make sure I'm not gouging into this piece of meat. I like placing my hands underneath and pushing up in the areas that I am working on. Good sharp knife is a must. You're going to find fat veins like this. You don't chase them, you're going to create a bit of a trench. So I'm going to be working around this corner, so I'm not worried about any fat or silver skin that might be on this thin end of the flat. This part is pretty lean and can dry, so I like to knock it off. None of this trimming goes to waste, folks. This makes great burgers. Grain of our brisket is running in this direction. So anytime I make a cut on either end, I want to try to make the cut along with the grain. It might not be 100%, but I want to make sure it's somewhat with the grain. I don't want to leave anything out, so I'm going to be turning this brisket more than I would if I was just knocking out a trim. This is not very comfortable, but let's flip over and really start working on evening this with this. First thing we're going to do is get rid of this mohawk. Some of this fat. And you can see how thick that fat is. All right. We're looking for about a 1/4 inch of fat right here, folks. You can see how much fat we've got to remove. You're going to notice that on the thin end of the flat, I'm not going to remove very much fat, if any, because I want to try to even out the thicker end of the flat with the thinner end. Still pretty hard. I can get in here and get some more. All right, now let's work on the shape. Still got some fat right there that we don't need. We're just going to round this off. On our brisket, we don't want any angles. No 90, no 45-degree edges. Then we want to come back with our kitchen shears, and we're going to start rounding off these very edges. If you're more comfortable using your knife, you can absolutely do that. Folks, these rounded edges will allow for the smooth flow of heat and smoke over this brisket. That way smoke is not banging up against an angle, causing things to dry or burn based on how hot your pit is running. And I do that on both sides. All right, this should get us done right here, folks. I'm happy with this. All our edges are rounded. This is the greatest part. This is the best part of the brisket as far as I'm concerned. Don't ever gouge out all of this fat. You end up with a big hole in there. I'll leave a little fat on there. It's not a problem. Before you slice burnt ends, if you want to get rid of this, you can. Not a problem. See the back side? Nicely rounded. And I mentioned how I left all that extra fat on the thin end of the flat to try to make it more even. And we pretty much accomplished that. Let's get ready for seasoning.